Hello, Manchester, and welcome once again to Ward 13. Our guest today is Thomas Massengale, who's a licensed homeopath and naturopath with advanced degrees in naturopathic nutrition. He's going to talk about genetically modified organisms and about Monsanto Company. In just a minute, he's going to join us from London, England. Well, I don't know if he's in London right now. In 1 second, after I announce on today's paper, which is Thursday, January 29th, we've got the headline, Craig teases mayoral run on social media. So Joyce Craig, the alderman from Ward 1, is almost sure to be throwing her hat into the ring for mayor. And quite a headline, huh? Teases. I don't think you would you've used this with a male. But I guess Joyce they think she's being coy that she hasn't already announced, since Pat Arnold and Mayor Gatsis announced in December. But we'll see. Tom, how are you?
Mr. Hopwood, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing.
Ward 13.
Oh, things here. We had the so-called blizzard, historic blizzard, the other day, but it turned out to be much ado about nothing.
I heard. I've been watching your show, though. Very good. I enjoyed. If you had Dave Colapinto on recently.
Oh yeah, we had him on
Excellent
before.
Program.
Now we were going to have you Skyping, but unfortunately we can't connect on Skype today, so we're going to do a telephone, just like with Dave.
No, we need more television like that.
Now, Tom, where do you live? Tell the audience where you live.
I live out in Somerset. You know the Glastonbury Music Festival?
Oh yeah, west of England.
I live on the next farm up the hill.
You're kidding.
It's an organic cow farm.
You live near Camelot, then?
I do.
That's where Arthur, King Arthur, where Camelot was, and that's a very holy
Indeed.
place for Celts.
Not only Camelot, but me too.
Now, explain what a homeopath and a naturopath is to the audience.
Well, as a homeopath, I use homeopathic remedies as part of a larger treatment program. Really, as a naturopath, we're looking at holistic lifestyle changes. Initially there may be supplementation, vitamins and the like. But ultimately what we aim to do is change your underlying physical nature through dietary changes and lifestyle changes, exercise, essentially.
Now, when I knew you back at Boston University, incidentally, it's the 5th anniversary, just a few days ago, of the passing of the great Howard Zinn, who was...
Yeah, I saw that online.
Yeah.
We were very lucky to know him.
Oh, yeah, he was a great, great man, and a great friend to his students. When my father passed away, Howard was there for me, just like an uncle. And, we hadn't seen each other for 25 years. A remarkable man.
I know he had an influence on both of us that remains to this day.
Now, does that influence have anything to do with you? You studied international relations at Boston University. What made you want to become a homeopath and a naturopath?
I grew up with natural medicine all around me as a little kid, in fact. I went to the doctor that most of our friends call the quack, and he taught very sensible medicine, taught very sensible lifestyle to us. And because of that, I grew up with this stuff, and it seems very natural.
Now,
yeah. I finally turned to studying it. It just fascinated me. I love it.
Now, one of the things I learned from the Howard Zinn class, not necessarily from Howard, but, Howard would always throw open his classes to his students to talk because he believed we were all equal, is that homeopathic medicine used to be very much accepted in American society up until probably World War I. And that Henry Ford or some other tycoon was essential in promoting what we would call medicine nowadays, the reliance on drugs and surgery.
It was really the AMA in the late 20s and early 30s.
Yeah.
that chased everything that didn't fit the patentable big pharma model. And, we've actually been very lucky in America that a lot of the complementary treatments have remained, with a great deal of political struggle to see that happened. But
what is a complementary?
It could be worse. We just had a lot of herbal remedies banned here in Europe a couple of years ago.
How was
that? It's really unfortunate, and the only reason is because they take away from big pharma's profits, and the things that were taken off the shelves aren't patentable.
Now, I know this is a naive question, but thinking about Switzerland and Sandoz and all that, one thing is the big pharma is powerful in the European Union as it is in the United States.
Of course, but there are more checks and balances because there is a true political array. There are liberal parties and progressive forces at play, as well as conservatives, which I think isn't really the case in the States anymore.
Well, that brings up a point about, we were taught by Howard that we essentially are a one-party state, which is not far-fetched when you consider that the United States was set up where we were supposed to have no parties because everybody was supposed to believe essentially the same thing. And,
right.
We were taught there were two wings of a Republican Party, which I see very little evidence that that's not true. Speaking of the other wing of the Republican Party, Barack Obama, what do you think about Barack Obama and his attitude towards the Food and Drug Administration? I think there is he appoint one of the biggest lobbyists for one of the biggest, what would you call Monsanto, a food company?
You're talking about Michael Taylor, the new not new, but the recent F.D.A. food safety czar.
He's the czar of the F.D.A. Obama. Why would Barack
Monsanto executive? He's actually gone back. Yeah, it's like the military-industrial complex. He's gone back and forth between Monsanto and the F.D.A. for years now.
Yeah, listen to this. He's the czar of food safety at the F.D.A.,
right.
the Food and Drug Administration. He started. He's a lawyer, of course. He's not a chemist
He's not an expert on food safety.
Yeah, he started with King and Spalding.
You have to understand, John. Food safety is a buzzword now for eliminating small local players and installing corporate farming once and for all globally.
Well,
as a naturopath, one of our tenets, it comes from Hippocrates, who the doctors get along with as well. He said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." And unfortunately, that way of thinking is being taken away from us. Safe food supply is, in fact, anything but being made available to us through through legislation and economic influence and the political influence globally.
Well,
from Barack Obama right through to the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Right. Now, this is not related to genetically modified organisms, GMO foods, but I first read about Monsanto around 1999 or 2000 when there was a great scandal in the Canadian F.D.A. It had to do with bovine somatropin, which is bovine growth hormone, which Monsanto had bought the patent for and aggressively started marketing. BST, or BGH, increases the milk production of cows. But of course, there was a great question as to the safety. BST,
particularly regarding
cancer. BST was approved in the United States and is used now, and it was approved originally in Canada until it was found out that Monsanto had bribed the Canadian FDA officials and that they quashed an internal report by Monsanto that BST actually is a carcinogen. Now, BST is no longer marketed in Canada. It was pulled off after the scandal. It's not marketed in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Israel, or the entire European Union. Now, how can a product, BST, that is a carcinogen banned in most of the OECD countries, the top economies, why is that legal in the United States?
Well, why do you think? Monsanto is very powerful.
Well, when the president,
that was in 2000. Let's talk about what Monsanto is up to today. I don't know if you remember when WikiLeaks had that enormous dump. One of the things that sort of got lost were some communiques from the French ambassador, the United States ambassador to France. So let me see if I can recall. I believe the quote was in one of his cables: "Europe is moving backwards and forwards, and not forwards on this issue," which was implementation of GMOs, with France playing a leading role, along with Austria, Italy, and even the European Commission, moving to retaliation. Note that word, retaliation, will make clear that the current path, i.e., not accepting American GMO crops, has real cost to EU interests and could help strengthen the European pro-biotech voice. That was the American ambassador talking about retaliating against France and our European allies for not accepting Monsanto's crops in their fields.
Now, why is there opposition to Monsanto's patented crops being allowed
why
into?
Why is there support for Monsanto's crops? First of all, let's get rid of the myth that the old chestnut Bill Gates keeps trotting out there, that there's increased productivity so it's going to feed the poor. Not true. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever of increased productivity through GM crops. What there is the farmers have to buy the seeds every year, over and over again. And the real issue that comes in is the seeds are a great source of profit, but where Monsanto really makes their money is glyphosate. That's known commercially as Roundup pesticide.
Oh, Roundup, the pesticide. Yeah.
People have this idea that we've reduced pesticide use with GMOs. We haven't. We use more pesticides than ever with GMOs, but it's all glyphosate made by Monsanto exclusively under patent, and that's what these plants are tolerant to. But we have been finding traces in human tissue and human breast milk, for goodness sakes.
So
Even through to human breast milk, this pesticide has been trickling through, and we're being told it's absolutely safe.
I just want to ask. I want to just clarify something. So, when we read in an article that Monsanto has genetically engineered a crop to be resistant to aphids or other pests, actually what it's being engineered for is to be friendly towards this herbicide? Is that what's
Correct.
going on? That's not
Correct.
quite what we've been led to believe.
And we're also, what we're doing is creating a whole new generation of superweeds, so that as mutations occur and weeds come to accommodate glyphosate, we're going to have to come up with new, stronger pesticides.
So one of the things we have to realize is that Monsanto is not really a food company. It's even a biotech. It's a chemical company. Right.
But all the big food companies, the big players in food now are who? Monsanto, Dow Chemical. I mean, these are Bayer. These are chemical companies.
Well, my father used
that are taking over with the F.D.A's support and with the State Department support, as you can tell from what I just read you earlier, taking over the food chain in the name of food safety.
They're using
led by the food safety czar, Michael Taylor, ex-Monsanto.
Ex-Monsanto executive and lobbyist appointed by Barack Obama, who we voted for thinking he was a progressive.
Correct. I had so much hope for Barack Obama, and I'm so surprised by decisions like this. It's really disheartening to see him putting a Monsanto executive in charge of food safety at the FDA. Really disheartening, because that was not the message he sent out, as far as I'm concerned, during his campaigns.
Well, one of the things Michael Taylor's most famous for as a lawyer was coming up with a interpretation of the Delaney Clause, which is an old law concerning food safety that and dealing with carcinogens. And he came up with an interpretation that essentially watered down the Delaney Clause. And
Right.
you read about it, this nitpicking. What we're dealing with is regulation, and since Reagan and the first Bush, the great push has been towards deregulation. And what they're essentially doing is deregulating the FDA further than what it was. And we've seen in states like New Hampshire a push, which I believe is reasonable, for having GMO foods labeled. Now, that bill died in 2013. That bill died in the New Hampshire House.
It's gone to committee. But let me say something about that.
But it was passed in Vermont.
JustLabelIt.org raise 1 million signatures and deliver them to the FDA saying, we want any genetically modified organisms in our food labeled. 1 million people. I think that's got to be an unprecedented number. The FDA acknowledged something under 400 people as being associated with that because they only looked at comments on the site and ignored the digital signatures, dismissed them. You've now got a group of big corporations masquerading under this umbrella, the Grocery Manufacturers Association. You familiar with them?
Oh yeah, GMA.
Coca-Cola, Unilever, Starbucks, Monsanto. I mean, and they are in the first half of 2013. We don't have figures beyond there. They spent $27 million fighting this movement, state by state, including in New Hampshire, getting it sent to committee, where it's effectively died. So
right.
I wouldn't give up hope, and if people make enough noise, it will come back.
Well, one of my friends, Tim Smith, who was my running mate, was a proponent of the bill. It was sent to committee 185 to 162, which effectively killed it. And with the Tea Party in control of the House and the Senate now, the Tea Party, for all their talk about states' rights and freedom, is about corporate power and how to enhance it. Can you tell us about the Farmer Assurance Provision Act that Monsanto managed to get a law to protect itself?
Are you talking about the Monsanto Protection Act?
Oh, yeah. They call it the Farmer Assurance Provision.
Right. That came in and was signed by Obama. I believe it expired at the end of 2013, thank God. But what it was designed to do was not protect farmers, unless you consider Monsanto a farmer, but in fact protect people who were introducing genetically modified organisms into the food chain, such that if down the line, if it were found to cause adverse effects on our health, to cause cancers, to cause digestive problems, as we're finding in animal experiments, then the companies would, under federal law, be accountable for nothing.
Also, what it did was restrict the power of federal courts from, when they were hearing a lawsuit, from banning farmers, big corporate farmers, for actually planting the seeds that the lawsuit was. The court couldn't make an injunction stopping the planting of these seeds. Right.
It goes back to the days of the Magna Carta. The landowners. The massive landowners have a little power, and the rest of us nothing.
Oh, yeah, we're going back to, isn't that what's happening in America? We're seeing a turn back to the robber barons and the feudalism of the old bare-knuckled capitalism of olden times.
I'm eternally an optimist, and I believe we can create a different world, and I think the pendulum will swing back. At the moment, it's not a great time. Obviously, we all saw the statistics on the vanishing middle class in America.
Oh, yes.
Just the other day.
Well, Tom? What
will it continue? Will it continue this way? Can this sort of greed and this sort of reconcentration of wealth prevail? I don't think it can without a middle class to support it.
Well, Tom, one of the policy decisions made by the federal government, the powers that be, when deals are really cut at wherever they go for their conferences, and where a so-called what we thought was a progressive, Barack Obama rubs shoulders with corporate lobbyists from Monsanto and others. Right. One of the policies of the United States was to ensure a cheap food supply. A cheap food supply ensures that food prices will be low, and that puts a brake on the growth of wages. So it's almost like everything fits into each other, that we're going to have this the complete corporatization of the food supply. And it goes hand in hand.
A cheap toxic food supply is going to be very, very expensive.
Well, that's true. And what do you consider those expenses? Health problems?
Healthcare. I mean, Big Pharma will be thrilled about it. If one can be thrilled about such a thing, the profits will be there. But, I mean, glyphosate, it seems pretty clear to us that glyphosate causes a lot of damage to the digestive system and to internal organs. There's a lot more research we need to do, but the first signs aren't good now that we've got some research that has been being paid for someone other than the interested parties.
Well, that's increasingly a problem where the corporations themselves write the laws and do the research, right. Isn't it?
I do believe this will backfire. I mean, back to Howard. Howard was an optimist.
Oh, yes.
And Howard believed in the influence we have in our large acts and our small acts every day. So if we don't support these corporations, if we do buy sustainably raised food from local sources that are done in a way that doesn't destroy the earth, does give us the proper nutrition without introducing toxic chemicals into our body, we will change the markets. And people are increasingly becoming aware of it. There's just no way around it. You can't, all the nonsense in the world in the press can't stamp out the truth.
But we're
bizarrely, one of the places that Monsanto has taken their biggest hit is on Facebook, of all things. This marketing site that's in the business of selling our identities, making us the product, and selling us to advertisers. But causes like a healthy food supply have gotten more exposure than ever on Facebook, of all places.
But there's a great war that's been going on for years against the information about healthy foods. I'll bring up one. Richard Rhodes was a Pulitzer Prize winner. He won the Pulitzer Prize for writing a great book on the atomic bomb, the history of the atomic bomb. Wrote a book about the food industry in the United States. And his basic premise was that the meat industry in America, the cattle and the meat industry, the same conditions that led to mad cow disease in England existed in the United States. Now, my brother has lived in the UK, he's lived in England for 30 years. He can't donate blood in the United States. He can't because he was exposed, he was a meat eater. The thing was, though...
The conditions you're talking about, if I can explain a little about them, this is a lot of why big cattle states in America are starting to introduce what are called ag-gag laws.
Yes, that's...
Which make it illegal for you to trespass on an industrial farm and release photographs from it or video from it. It makes it illegal for activists to surreptitiously apply for jobs in those facilities so that they can get inside and get information, because these are like military bases.
Yes.
The security is very, very high. But now I live on an organic cattle farm, which is exactly the opposite. It's a small business. I know the farmer really well. Everything, every animal on that site is healthy. Things like TB are watched very, very carefully. But the big difference is, and what people don't realize, but meat has gotten a very bad reputation because we've been feeding our animals grain, which makes them very high in, so maybe I'm getting too technical for your audience, I don't know, makes them very high in omega-6 oils, which are pro-inflammatory, as opposed to omega-3 oils like fish oils, which are very anti-inflammatory and very, very good for your cell walls for a number of things. And now it might surprise you to know that grass-fed lamb, not salmon, but grass-fed lamb is actually the highest source of omega-3 of any food we have.
Really? Not fish?
And cows, the cows and the lambs break down the grass through, cows have 4 stomachs and break and
Tom, we got to wrap it up. We got to come
into the DHA and the EPA that we can use. That's incredibly beneficial for us. But the American meat supply, the industrial meat supply, is poison for us.
Tom, you got a couple.
It unquestionably leads to chronic disease of many sorts.
Tom, we got a couple minutes left. Would you like to sum up? What would you like to say to the audience, if you got a minute or so? What's the most pressing concern? What could you say?
In New Hampshire, since it's a political show, push to get the labeling laws in effect. Get in touch with justlabel.org. But more importantly, on a personal level, eat organic food. Eat grass-fed meat. Don't eat organic fish because it's actually industrially raised fish.
Really?
Eat vegetables. Don't use vegetable oil. Use olive oil. You can make changes that will insulate you from the problems endemic to industrial, intensively raised crops and animals.
Okay, Tom.
So you'll be taking away the profits from companies that really don't deserve your support.
Well, Tom, thanks for joining us. I'm going to try to get some activists on the show to talk about the GMO labeling movement here in New Hampshire, and we'd like to have you on that in the near future. But thank you so much for calling in.
I look forward to it.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Okay, John. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you once again, Manchester, for visiting Ward 13. We'll see you next week. Night.